Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So today I'm going to be talking about P.U.N.K, but rather than doing a deck profile where I talk just about the list and then show some games, this is going to be a bit more of a primer / combo guide for P.U.N.K in its current iteration in Master Duel. One thing I do want to address at the top of the video is the particular build I've chosen for this primer. This is very much more of a, I would call this more of a quote-unquote pure P.U.N.K build, where we're not focusing as much on the Kashtiras, but I do think that Kashtira P.U.N.K is probably the strongest way to play it. The reason I'm choosing a build like this with like Bestials and Assault Synchron and Chaos Ruler is because I want to talk about more than just Kashtira P.U.N.K. I want to talk about P.U.N.K as a whole, right? So we're going to be covering combos that are relevant for Kashtira P.U.N.K, but at the same time, we're also going to be covering using P.U.N.K as an engine, using it to set up a lot of graveyard fodder, and using P.U.N.K as a pure deck. I want to make sure that the information in this primer is applicable across all variants, which is why I have this kind of like pure / it's a little bit of a mishmash variant too, with, you know, the Fenrirs. We also have the P.U.N.Ks and the Assault Synchrons. While I don't think this build would be bad to play on ladder at all, I think you could make a more optimized build. Again, this build in particular is more geared to showing off how the deck plays and so on and so forth. So I don't usually do this with the combo guides, but I wanted to make this a bit of a primer as well. So before we actually talk about the combos, I wanted to start by talking about the P.U.N.K cards individually, especially because we did actually get some new P.U.N.K cards, I think relatively recently, maybe even this last set. But I want to go over each of the P.U.N.K cards individually, their role in the deck, how many copies I like to play typically, and then we'll go over the combos. I had a lot of comments in my last P.U.N.K video requesting a combo guide. I was, kind of throwing it out there because I realized I hadn't done one for this deck yet. And so I was like, hey, how many of you actually want to see a combo guide for this? And a lot of people said they did, and there were a good amount of likes on those comments as well. So I figured I'd go ahead and give you all this primer here. So let's go ahead and start off with what I think is probably the most important P.U.N.K monster in the main deck, and probably just overall, and that's going to be no P.U.N.K Amin. So this is the deck's most common starter. Amin is a level 3 Psychic Tuner. You can pay 600 life points to add a P.U.N.K monster from your deck to your hand. And all the P.U.N.K tuners have a second effect that sometimes comes up, but is not quite as relevant. So I'm not going to be focusing on those, although Amin's attack boost is probably one of the more relevant ones and common ones to come up, because it's whenever Amin gets sent to the graveyard that it triggers. But being able to add a P.U.N.K monster from deck to hand is very powerful and will get you going for a lot of your plays. I recommend playing 3 copies of Amin in any deck you plan to play any amount of P.U.N.K cards in. Next up, continuing with the level 3 tuners, we're actually going to go with Sharakusai next. Sharakusai is also a level 3 Psychic Tuner. It's going to be true of all the level 3 monsters. They are all Psychic Tuners. Sharakusai says you can pay 600 life points to fusion summon a P.U.N.K fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters in your hand and field as material. And during your opponent's turn, you can pay 600 life points to synchro summon a P.U.N.K synchro monster using monsters you control as material. Both of these effects are very, very relevant, and they will both come up in your average combo line for a P.U.N.K deck. Being able to fuse into the Rising Carp on your turn, and then sync into the Amazing Dragon on the opponent's turn, are both very, very valuable things to be doing. You always, in a pure variant, you always want to be playing at least 1 copy of this card. You really only need 1. I'm playing 2 in my example build, because if you're playing 2 Rising Carp, which is not a bad idea, particularly in a meta where Unicorn's running around a lot, then you want to play 2 Sharakusai. It also just gives your deck more long game. So 2 is optional, but 1 is mandatory for Sharakusai. Alright, going on to the other P.U.N.K tuners. We have Gagaku P.U.N.K Wagon, level 3 Psychic Tuner again, 900 attack, 600 defense. You pay 600 life points to add a P.U.N.K spell from your deck to your hand. Also, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a P.U.N.K monster you control, or if your opponent targets one for an attack, you can draw a card. This effect actually does come up sometimes, the ability to draw, and there have been games every now and then where I'll draw a disruption during the opponent's turn. It can actually get you out of a pinch. So, but it's not very often you'll have Wagon up on your opponent's turn. You probably got disrupted if you did. Wagon is a mandatory one of if you're playing a P.U.N.K focused strategy, but if you're just playing a light P.U.N.K engine, you don't need this. I think I said this true, but that's the same as true of Sharakusai. Sharakusai is needed at least 1, maybe 2, but definitely at least 1 if you're playing a P.U.N.K dedicated strategy. But if you're just using a lighter P.U.N.K package, you don't necessarily need 1. Same is also going to be true of Madam Spider. Level 3 Earth Psychic Tuner, 900 attack, 600 defense. You can pay 600 life points to add a P.U.N.K trap from your deck to your hand. And if when you activate, sorry, a Punk card effect that targets a card your opponent controls, you can have the attack of an opponent's monster, which, again, comes up very rarely. Again, it's just not common. You'll have this on the field when you're actually making plays, but it can come up occasionally, so... Alright, so that's it for the level 3 tuners. Now, as far as the rest of the Punk monsters, they have a level 5 effect monster, Deer Note. This was one that came out later and very much boosted the playability of the Punk strategy overall. Level 5, 2100 attack and 1800 defense warrior. This one's not psychic, this one is a warrior. You can reveal one other Punk monster in your hand, special summon either the revealed monster or this card, and send the other to the graveyard. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target a Punk monster in your graveyard, except a level 5 monster. Special summon it, but you cannot special summon Punk Deer Note for the rest of the turn. You can only use each effect once per turn. So, when this card is most often going to be used as a synchro material with a level 3 monster to go for level 8 synchro, it allows you to bring back any Punk monster in your graveyard, which you can either bring back the tuner you just used, or you can bring back a level 8 monster, which we'll talk about those two in a minute, that you likely use to set up the play. Deer Note is mandatory at least 1. I really like 2. It's not just like Sharakusai where 2 is nice for a longer game. I think you do kind of need Deer Note at 2 in most Punk decks because a lot of your combos revolve around summoning it from the deck off of another Punk monster we're going to talk about in a second here. So if you only play 1 copy and you draw it, you might have a hard time pulling off your combo line. So for a pure dedicated Punk deck, I would even go so far as to say 2 is probably mandatory. You can get away with just 1, but you really, really should be playing 2. If you're using Punk as an engine for another deck, then you can get away with just 1, but if you have the room, 2 is also still recommended. Alright, going on to that level 8 Punk monster, we're going to talk about No Punk Foxy Tune next. Alongside Amin, I would consider this one of the most important monsters for the deck, as far as the main deck monsters go. No Punk Foxy Tune is a level 8, 2300 attack, 2600 defense beast monster. Once per turn, when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can gain life points equal to that monster's original attack. That effect almost never comes up, but it can be relevant occasionally. It's more the other effects are going to be more relevant. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. You can shoot a Punk monster, special summon this card from your hand. That's okay, but the real effects here, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard as a cost. Then, as part of the effect, you send another card from your hand to the graveyard. And if you do, special summon 1 Punk monster from your deck except a level 8 monster. So, alongside Amin, this is how you get your combos going most of the time. A lot of your combos are going to involve activating Amin to add the Foxy Tune. Then you activate Foxy Tune, pitching it another card from your hand to special summon usually... Well, it depends if you're using a pure Punk strategy or Punk as an engine. We'll go over the 2 different combo lines here when we get into the combos. But long story short, you summon another Punk monster alongside Amin, and that's going to get your plays going. You do have to be careful with this card for a couple of reasons. It's very easily disruptible to something like Ash Blossom, or even Called by the Grave, because it does send itself as a cost. And speaking of the cost, it does have to send itself from the hand or field specifically to the graveyard. So if your opponent's got an Arise Heart up or a Shifter up and everything's getting banished, you will not be able to activate Foxy Tune. Since you cannot send the card to the graveyard for the cost, you are not able to pay the cost, therefore you cannot activate the card. The other level 8 Punk monster and the last main deck monster here is going to be No Punk Ogre Dance. Ogre Dance is a level 8, 2500 attack, 2000 defense fiend. That says once per turn you can, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can make this card gain attack equal to that opponent's monster's original attack until the end of the turn. That is actually pretty relevant if this happens to be on the field. If that's the case, you probably got disrupted, but that is to say it is still a very relevant effect. You can only use each of the following effects of No Punk Ogre Dance once per turn. You can tribute a Punk monster, specialist from your hand, much like Foxy Tune. It has the ability to summon itself that way. You can also send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard as a cost, add 1 Punk monster from your deck to your hand, except a level 8 monster. So, Ogre Dance tends to be one of the more flexible cards in any Punk deck. It's definitely good in any deck with Punk cards in it, obviously being able to discard it to add a Amin to get your plays going is very, very good, but at the end of the day, it is a consistency booster and isn't 100% necessary. I've even played more dedicated Punk strategies that play fewer copies of this card. This is really just anywhere 0 to 3, depending on how many you can fit. Oh, and I didn't say, sorry, for Foxy Tune, how many copies you should play. At least 1 Foxy Tune is required to combo. I, much like Deer Note though, I like 2 because I like having the ability to not only open it, but still have one in deck to potentially search. In a real dedicated Punk deck, I would even play 3 because this card is not just a combo piece, but also a consistency boost. And in a pure Punk deck, if you're playing Sharakusai, can actually start your combos by itself. And of course, the other card you send from your hand. So Foxy Tune, I would say, I would play 2 to 3. You only need 1 if you're only using Punk as an engine. Even then, I'd play 2, but you can really only get away with 1 if you absolutely have to. But play 2 to 3 of this card. And again, Ogre Dance, as I was saying, this is play anywhere 0 to 3. It really just depends on how much room you have. For a dedicated Punk strategy, you probably should be playing at least 2 of these, though, 2 to 3. But if you're using Punk as an engine, again, just anywhere 0 to 3, depending on how many you can fit. So those are all the Punk monsters. Let's go ahead and talk about their extra deck monsters now. That was the main deck monsters, I should say. Punk has 1 fusion and 2 synchros. We'll start with the fusion. Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk Rising Carp is a level 8 fusion monster with 1000 attack, 2600 defense. It's a fish that is made with any 2 Punk monsters. You contribute this fusion summoned card, special summon up to 2 Punk monsters with different names from each other from your hand and or deck, except level 8 monsters in defense position. If you synchro summoned using this card as a material, you can target 1 Punk monster you control. It can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. You can only use each effect of Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk Rising Carp once per turn. So, this ends up being a hugely relevant combo piece. This is pretty much Rescue Cat for Punks right here. It is a fusion monster, but thanks to Sharakusai, we don't have to have a specific spell. We can just use that monster to fuse and make the Rising Carp. While Rising Carp is the most important combo piece we have, it is also one of the most disruptible. And if you are looking to play against Punk, this is one of the prime choke points. If Rising Carp gets Ash Blossomed, Punk often has an extremely difficult time coming back. You can also, much like Rescue Cat, flip up Imperm when this card is summoned because it's not a quick effect. They can't chain Rising Carp to Imperm. And then even if they tribute off the Rising Carp, it'll still be negated. So also, if you are going second instead of Call By, you can use Call By after this card has tributed itself for the cost to negate it as well. Long story short, if you can negate Rising Carp, Punk often has a very difficult time recovering. So when you're doing your combo lines, right, you want to be mindful of your Rising Carp. If possible, if you can set up some kind of an Omni Negate, which we'll talk about doing that in a particular combo line here shortly, you can use that to potentially protect the Rising Carp in that regard. But it's not a bad idea to, like, you'll still want to use the Rising Carp. Like, it's not like just because it's fragile doesn't mean it's not powerful and important. Just make sure that you do have a backup plan, like if this gets Ash Blossomed, or you have like something prepared for the Ash Blossom in general. Alright, for the Synchro monsters, and as far as how many you should play, you only need 1. You can definitely get away with only 1. I like 2 if you're playing 2 Sharakusai, or sometimes even if not, because again, with Unicorn running around, if you're only playing 1 and Unicorn snipes this card, it's not going to be impossible to make plays by any means, but it will become more difficult. So, this example build has 2, but you only need the 1. Amazing Dragon is going to be... Actually, let's start with the lower level Synchro monster. We'll start with Jam Dragon Drive, our in-house level 8 Synchro. 2700 attack, 2400 defense Psychic. Synchro monster takes a Psychic tuner and one or more non-tuners. Of course, all of our tuners are Psychic, so that is all good. If this card is special summoned by the effect of a Punk card or Synchro summoned, you can pay 600 life points, take 1 level 3 Psychic monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. If your opponent activates a card or effect in response to your Punk card or effect activation while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this is a Psychic that does cost life points, much like the tuners, which will be relevant for one of our cards we're going to talk about later. It can add any level 3 Psychic monster, which means it can add, and I just realized I actually forgot to put this card in the deck, so let's go ahead and make sure we do that. I just take out one of the random Bestial cards. But yeah, it means we can also play the Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, because this is a level 3 Psychic tuner. The Jam Dragon Drive can search it, and sometimes it's really good to search this. Sometimes you do just want to get a Punk tuner for extenders, but you can also grab the Ghost Ogre if you really want to as well. The other effect of the Jam Dragon Drive can also be very relevant during your opponent's turn. Like, if you summon this turn 1 and then use it to make Amazing Dragon on your opponent's turn, again, something we'll talk about later, then you can potentially bring it back if your opponent starts to chain stuff to your Punk effects on their turn. And then you have another body on the board that can potentially then add the Ghost Ogre if you didn't already, because it's being summoned by the effect of a Punk card by its own effect. So Jam Dragon Drive, honestly, if you read it, it might not read that impressive. It didn't to me the first time I read this card, but when you actually play the deck, you'll see this is a very, very important card. You can play one or you can play two if you really, really want to. You could also just play another level 8 Synchro. I usually just find another level 8 Synchro to play, but definitely play at least one, I would say, is mandatory for a pure Punk strategy. And finally, Amazing Dragon is going to be the deck's big boss monster. Level 11, 3000 attack, 2800 defense, Sea Serpent Synchro. Takes any tuner and one or more non-tuners. If this card is Synchro summoned, you can target cards your opponent controls up to the number of level 3 psychic monsters with different names you control and in your graveyard, return them to the hand. You can target one Punk monster in your graveyard, except Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk Amazing Dragon. Special summon it. You can only activate one Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk Amazing Dragon effects per turn, and only once that turn. So you only either get the bounce or the special summon effect. You don't get both, but usually you'll be making this on your opponent's turn with the Sharakusai anyway, and any level 8 monster. So in that regard, you're mostly going to be using the bounce on your opponent's turn, and then the revive effect on your turn. That said, Amazing Dragon is actually a very flexible card. It's very good going second, obviously, for bouncing your opponent's board. But it's also not bad to make going first sometimes. If you play 2 copies, I would only ever make this card going first if you play 2 copies. If you do play 2 copies, it can be worth it because it puts an extra huge body on the board. But you don't need to. You do not need to at all. You can absolutely play this deck with only 1 copy. Much like Rising Carp, the second copy is slightly win more, but also definitely has... I would say the second Rising Carp is more win more than the second Amazing Dragon. The second Amazing Dragon actually has a lot of useful applications, and we will cover a combo line where we make use of both Amazing Dragons here. Alright, that does it for all of the monsters. Now let's go ahead and talk about Punk's spell and trap cards. For their spell cards, they have a field spell called Punk Jam Extreme Session. It says once per turn you can banish a Punk card from your graveyard, special summon a Punk monster from your hand, and if a psychic monster you control pay life points to activate its effect, you can draw 1 card. And that effect you can actually activate twice per turn. Extreme Session is huge. You only need 1 copy. You can play 2 if you really want to, but you really only need 1 because the card is, of course, searchable by the Wagon here. So, yeah, being able to draw multiple cards gives you so much advantage, and is one of the big reasons to play Punk, is how much advantage it gains. Not only that, but of course the banishing effect will allow you even more extension, which in turn, if you summon another Punk tuner, that'll pay life points to add a card, and then you draw another card off of this, will get you even more advantage. So very, very good card, but you only need the 1, because again, it's very searchable. Punk got 2 new continuous spells relatively recently. They got Gagaku Punk Wild Plucking, continuous spell card. At the start of the damage step, if your Punk monster battles an opponent's monster, you can destroy that opponent's monster. You can only use this effect of Gagaku Punk Wild Picking once per turn. If this card in its owner's spell and trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can activate this effect. Punk monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. This card is garbage. Play 0. Do not ever play this card. It's just not good. The destroy effect, the effect that activates when it gets destroyed by an opponent's card is not only situational, but also your Punk monsters not being able to be destroyed by battle is very irrelevant. So is honestly the first effect, because you're just going to use Amazing Dragon to bounce all of your opponent's monsters anyway, so like you're not going to be battling into opponent's monsters. Yeah, don't play this card. The other one is Gagaku Punk Crash Beat, another continuous spell card. If your opponent activates a card or effect that targets your Punk monsters, you can target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. You can only use this effect of Gagaku Punk Crash Beat once per turn. If this card is owner's spell and trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can activate this effect. This turn, your opponent cannot target Punk monsters you control with card effects, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. This card is slightly less garbage, but it's still pretty garbage. Here's the thing, if the first effect negated and destroyed cards that targeted your Punk monsters, I would very much consider playing a copy of this card. That would be a really, really good effect, but the problem is, it doesn't negate the card or effect that targets your Punk monsters, it just destroys a card your opponent controls. So, not only does that not help against the thing that's targeting your stuff to probably negate it, but on top of that, this card is only good going second, because if you play it going first, your opponent doesn't have cards for you to destroy. So, Because of that, this card ends up being just hot garbage. Don't play either of the continuous spell cards. They're both really bad. The trap cards, the last two cards we're going to talk about, are another story. Joruri Punk Dangerous Gabu is a normal trap card that says you can target one effects monster your opponent controls to negate its effects until the end of this turn. Then, if you control a Punk monster, gain life points equal to that targeted monster's original attack. You can only activate one Joruri Punk Dangerous Gabu per turn. So this card is really interesting in that it's totally generic monster negation. Like, you don't have to control a Punk monster to negate the opponent's monster's effects. You literally just have to control a Punk monster to gain life points, which is very much the win more part of this effect. Having searchable monster effect negation is really good. That said, you should really only play one or other of the Punk trap cards. I think they're both about as good as the others, so it really depends what you value more. The monster effect negation or the other effect of Joruri Punk Nashiwari Surprise, which says you can target one set card your opponent controls, or if you control a Punk monster, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls instead, destroy it. You can only activate one of these per turn. This one's a little bit more conditional, like destroying a set card is obviously not nearly as good as destroying a face-up card most of the time, and you need to have the Punk monster destroy the face-up card. That said, it's really not that hard to have a Punk monster on the field. In past formats, I've said that Gabu is just much better than Surprise. However, in this particular meta, Surprise is actually really good. And so in this particular meta, I slightly recommend wanting Run Surprise instead of one Gabu. But you can play Gabu as well. They're both fine cards, but I wouldn't play both. I would just play one or the other. Alright, I actually didn't expect to take that long, but that's fine. I wanted to get into a lot of detail about the Punk cards anyway. So that is the full breakdown of every Punk card. Now let's go ahead and see some of the combo lines the deck can do. Okay everybody, I'm actually back before we get to the combos real quick because there's one other thing I had to talk about that I completely forgot to even include in my initial deck build, and I'm really glad I remembered before I actually got to the combos, and that's Emergency Teleport. While this card does not have Punk in its name, this is very much an honorary Punk card because it summons any level 3 or lower psychic monster from your hand or deck. And I don't think I need to say why that's really important. This is pretty much just 2 free copies of Amin directly from the deck, or any other Punk tuner, really. Always play 2 copies of this card, and don't forget it like I almost did. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and go to the combos. Okay, so we're going to start off with our 1-card combo of no Punk Amin. So whenever I not only make combo guide videos, but just learn combos in general, the way that I find it most helpful is to start with what I consider the core or central combo, because a lot of combo decks tend to play out with like one main combo line, and the other lines kind of tend to branch or deviate from that combo line, but keep the same idea of what it's doing. So for this deck, the kind of what I consider to be the core combo line is the 1-card combo of Amin. So we're going to start with that. If you open Amin and nothing else, we have a lot of other cards in hand. As always as ever, we're just going to ignore them and only focus on the Amin. Going to normal summon Amin and activate the effect to add a Punk monster from our deck to our hand. The one we're going to want to add is our No Punk Foxy Tune. Let's go ahead and activate the Foxy Tune effect here. You have to be really careful about this. It's going to default you to the tribute to summon a monster, or to summon this monster. Don't do that. You want the 2 effect, which says to send it from the hand to the graveyard and special Punk from your deck. So we'll do that. I'm just going to send the Ash Blossom here so it stops asking me if I want to activate that. And now we want to special summon the Sharakusai from our deck. So we're going to go do so like this and activate the Sharakusai effect. Going to fusion summon the Rising Carp. We'll use our Sharakusai and that Amin, and throw the Rising Carp down right here. Now, we can optionally activate the Amin's effect. We don't need to, though, because this is not staying on the field. Going to activate the Rising Carp effect. It'll tribute itself. And now we get 2 Punk monsters from our deck in defense mode. Let's take one of our Deer Notes, and yes, we want to special summon another monster. We want to special summon Wagon in particular, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, now here I already have the field spell in hand, but if you did not, you would want to activate Wagon here to add the field spell. If you did already have the field spell like I do here, then you should get Madam Spider and add whatever trap card you play instead. But again, I'm playing this hand, assuming I only had the one Amin. So here, if I didn't already have it, I would activate Wagon and add the field spell to my hand. Now we can go ahead and activate the field spell. Do this before you Synchro Summon. This is very important. Do this before you Synchro Summon because we're Synchro Summoning for our Jam Dragon Drive. And you may or may not remember, but Jam Dragon Drive actually has an effect when it's Synchro Summoned that involves paying 600 life points to add a psychic monster. We're not only going to activate that, but also our Deer Note effect, and we can chain block the Jam Dragon Drive effect. I mean, if our opponent had an Ash Blossom, they would have used it by now. It might actually be worth it in some matchups to chain block the Deer Note effect instead. Now, with the Deer Note, you're going to want to summon specifically, very specifically, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Punk Sharakusai. Alright, Deer Note, we'll throw the Sharakusai right over here. And then we'll use the Jam Dragon Drive. If you want more disruption, you can add the Ghost Ogre here to have a hand trap to use during your opponent's turn. If you would like some more draws and extension, you can add the Madam Spider. Which one you add is pretty hand dependent, but for the sake of example of more extensions and draws, I'm going to show off adding the Madam Spider. But adding the Ghost Ogre is definitely not a bad idea here. We want to add it to the hand, yes, because the other option is to send it to the graveyard. Because we pay life points to activate the effect of a psychic monster, we get to activate our Extreme Session here, drawing an extra card. Now we can activate our Extreme Session's other effect, banishing one of the Punk monsters from our graveyard. Let's banish... It doesn't usually matter like too much. We just banish Wagon because we've already added our only spell here. And now we can special summon that Madam Spider we added. Now we can use Madam Spider's effect to pay 600, add whichever trap card you play, and because this is twice per turn, we get to draw another card off of the Extreme Session. And look at that, we even drew E-Telly if we wanted even more plays here. I mean, we also have the Saronir and the Assault Synchron, but here you go. So this is what you can get off of one. I'll even set this for good measure to include it in like our fields, but this is what you get off of one Zamin by itself, right? You can get the field spell, whole bunch of bodies on board, the trap card. Oh, and of course during your opponent's turn, I can actually go ahead and show this off by going to end phase here, because this is very much part of the combo line as well. During your opponent's turn, we can of course use Sharakusai's effect, and you can even use it during their end phase. Like, it's not restricted to the main phase, right? Pay 600 life points. That will summon the Amazing Dragon. And not only do we get to bounce our opponents, usually you get to bounce their whole board because you'll have at least two tuners in the yard, but you could have 3, sometimes even 4. But we can even chain block the Amazing Dragon effect if you want to with the field spell effect, because again, we did pay life points to activate a Psychic Monster effect. So there you go. That's a pretty typical Punk combo line for turn 1. That's like, again, what I consider to be the core combo line of just Zamin. So now that we have shown that off, let's go ahead and show off some more nuanced combo lines. Okay, so this combo line that I'm going to show off now is very relevant if you're playing Kashtira Punk. Or not just Kashtira Punk necessarily, but really any amount of level 7 monsters you can special summon. Before Kashtiras came out, one very popular tech in Punk was Instant Fusion, or Instant Contact, sorry, which allows you to summon a hero monster from your extra deck. They would summon one of the level 7 hero fusions and use that for pretty much the same thing we're going to use Fenrir for here. So this is a pretty popular tech, again, just playing the Kashtiras and or level 7 extenders. And the reason it is because we can add an Omni Negate to our board, and sometimes we can even do it before we make really any amount of plays, right? And this is a hand that is primed to do it, so I'll go ahead and show that off here. We're going to start by, of course, special summoning the Fenrir, because we have no monsters on our field, and because we can, we'll go ahead and activate the effect to add another copy of itself. If you were playing actual Kashtira Punk, you could add, like, any number of Kashtira monsters, but this particular example build, I'm only playing the Fenrir, so I'll just add the other Fenrir. We also have the Zamin, so we'll say the starting pieces for this are like Fenrir and Zamin, right? So we'll use Zamin and activate Zamin's effect in order to add the Foxy Tune. And then now we get to use Foxy Tune and even pitch the card that Fenrir added. Now, because we have an additional Punk monster in our hand, we can actually make the Baron before doing our combos, right? And that's the difference there. Because what Foxy Tune's going to do is summon the Sharakusai from our deck. I'll even go ahead... Well, I won't do it now because in an actual game, I would Synchro Summon Baron with these two right now. But again, that's because I have another Punk monster in hand. But let's say for the example of a combo, let's say I did not have another Punk monster in hand, right? And that Foxy Tune is my only Punk card in hand. Now, if that's the case and I summoned the Baron here, I wouldn't be able to do much else because then I don't have another Punk monster to fuse with the Sharakusai. So again, operating under the assumption we do not have another Punk card in hand, let's activate the Foxy Tune, pitch our extra Fenrir, and then summon Sharakusai from deck. And then activate Sharakusai in order to fusion summon the Rising Carp. Now, again, because I have Deer Note and Ogre Dance in hand, I could have just used one of those and had the Baron on my board, but I wanted to show it off this way because I feel like it's really easy to screw it up. Like, I've definitely screwed that up before where I'm like, oh, I can make the Baron first, and then I realize, like, wait, now I don't have plays with the Foxy Tune, so I want to show you how to do it this way first. So we'll once again using the Rising Carp effect. This is pretty much a lot like the first combo line where we're going to use the Wagon and summon the Deer Note as well. We'll throw those here and here. Now we'll use the Wagon effect in order to add the Extreme Session. It can activate said Extreme Session, and we're still going to want to summon the Jam Dragon Drive first. Because again, if we went for Baron here, then we wouldn't be able to synchro into a level 8, or we wouldn't be able to synchro with the Deer Note, and that would screw up our whole plan there. Alright, we'll use Deer Note to summon back the Sharakusai. It does have to be that one if we're going to go into Amazing Dragon on our opponent's turn. Let's throw that there. And then here we're definitely going to add the Madam Spider, because we're going to use our leftover Madam Spider to sync with the Fenrir now. Alright, so now we can activate the Field Spell effect. Again, we can just banish Wagon here. And that'll allow us to summon the Madam Spider. We can activate her effect. We get another search for a very relevant card. We get another draw off the field spell. And now we get to summon the Baron de Fleur. Don't use Sharakusai. Do not use Sharakusai, because again, we need to use Sharakusai to go into Amazing Dragon on our opponent's turn. So there you go. That's how to incorporate Baron into your board. Even if all you have is a Kashira monster and Amin, or really Amin plus any level 7, then you can still incorporate Baron into your board. You just can't do it at the start of the combo. But again, if you have any other Punk monster in hand like we did, then you can do Baron at the start of the combo, and then by doing so, you insulate your whole plays from like Ash Blossom, Nibiru, any kind of relevant disruption. So that's how to incorporate the Baron into your board. Again, this combo line ends up being particularly relevant for Kashira Punk, so I wanted to make sure that I included this in here as well. But let's go and see the next combo now. Okay, so I wanted to show off another one-card Amin combo, but this time we're going to be doing it differently. Now, I've talked quite a bit in this video already about using Punk as an engine versus playing a pure Punk deck. And if you're using Punk as an engine to help supplement, like, basically any kind of a mill strategy, like Tier Elements are now very often playing Punk, Zombies pretty often play Punk, lots of graveyard-based strategies really like to play them because they're very, very good at getting cards into the graveyard. And I'm going to show you how they can do that. And this is, again, a lot of why I built this particular deck for this video the way I did, is so I could show off standard Punk lines that are relevant to Cash Punk like we just saw, and then also how to use Punk as a graveyard setup engine. So we can do that with just Amin by itself, and we can add Amin with this Ogre Dance here. So we're going to start by doing that. Alright, now that we've added that, let's go ahead and normal summon our Amin and activate the effect. We're going to, as always as ever, add ourselves a Foxy Tune. Now we're going to activate Foxy Tune's effect. Not the first effect. Again, you got to always be mindful of this. It's so easy to click OK if you're going too fast here, but you got to make sure you click 2 first. And I'll just send, it doesn't matter at all, I'll just send the Ghost Ogre here. Now, if I was playing Punk as an engine, I'm not going to be using like Sharakusai and all these other tuners, because we typically don't have room for that in our graveyard-based decks. Plus, these cards don't really do much when getting milled. So, if you're not playing any of these cards, then what you do here with the Foxy Tune is you summon Deer Note. We're just going to go directly for our level 8 Synchro. Now here, instead of making Jam Dragon Drive, because again, in a more graveyard-based strategy, you probably wouldn't even be playing this, we're going to set up the Chaos Ruler instead. Now, Chaos Ruler in and of itself already, of course, represents many mills, and of course we also get to chain block it with the Deer Note effect as well, but we get far more mills than just the 5 off of Chaos Ruler here. Well, the Excavate, but you know what I mean. So this time, instead of bringing back the tuner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back the Foxy Tune, or just a level 8 punk monster in general, right? Now, again, we've chain blocked our Chaos Ruler. We'll go ahead and bring back our Foxy Tune, and now use the Chaos Ruler effect to excavate, read, mill our top 5. In this particular build, it's not really going to find anything useful. Again, this is mostly just for example. But now what you can do, if you want/need even more mills, is we have 2 level 8 monsters on the field, which means we can make a rank 8, particularly the Zombie Vampire. So we can go ahead and summon the Zombie Vampire and activate Zombie Vamp's effect, which will not only mill both players 4 cards, definitely always detach the Chaos Ruler here as well. So now we can mill both players 4 cards. We can also summon one of those monsters, so even if you don't hit anything particularly good, you can see if your opponent's got anything juicy. Here, why not? We'll summon their Blackland Fire Dragon. But on top of that, now you've very likely set up a dark and light monster in your graveyard to summon back, like the Chaos Ruler, right? I like to banish the Foxy Tune and Ogre Dance to bring back Chaos Ruler in a situation like this. So this isn't like a combo line for any one particular deck, but as you can see, Amin is capable of doing more than just going into punk plays. With Amin by itself, we were able to set up our graveyard strategy very well because we milled the top 9 cards of our deck, possibly got an Excavate too, again if we're playing a more focused strategy that wants to Excavate off of Chaos Ruler. We get a free monster, it can even be our opponent's monster, and then we even get to bring back the Chaos Ruler, and that doesn't count anything else in our hand, anything we've milled, etc. So that's how to use Punk as a graveyard setting up engine. Again, like I said before, the reason I built this deck for this video the way that I did was so I could show this off in addition to pure Punk plays. But let's go ahead and see some more Punk plays. I think I'll try to show off a combo if you do not open Amin in a more pure Punk deck. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start by activating our Ogre Dance here. Not for any one particular combo line, but because I'll go ahead and show off what to do if you don't open Amin, but you have the ability to get Sharakusai, or if you open Sharakusai plus any other Punk monster. Now, in this case, our Punk monster is Amin, but it's fine. We are just going to pretend like it's a random other Punk monster. It's probably going to be pretty self-explanatory, but I'll walk you through it anyway. So we're going to normal summon our Sharakusai and activate the effect to go into the Rising Carp. We'll fuse it with our random Punk monster in hand. And we'll throw down the Rising Carp. Now at this point we can't activate, well, again, we have Amin here, but we're pretending that's not Amin. Now we can activate the Rising Carp effect, and we'll use that to summon, you guessed it, Logon and Deer Note. And I mean, from this point, again, this is why I say it's pretty self-explanatory, because this combo line really just kind of cuts out the Amin as the middleman. Right now, again, I added Wagon here, assuming we don't have the field spell in hand. If you did already have the field spell in hand, then you should add summon. Well, actually, here you could summon Amin because we haven't used it yet. But again, that's because we already have the field spell in hand. If you don't have the field spell in hand, even if you haven't used Amin, I would still go for Wagon because the field spell will offer just so much advantage and extension. It's just so worth it. But yeah, I mean, again, here it's pretty much the same that we've been doing, right? We're going into the GM Dragon Drive. We can activate both the GM Dragon Drive and the Deer Note effects. Deer Note always brings back Sharakusai if you're going for a pure Punk line. Excuse me. Yeah, if you want to summon Amazing Dragon on your opponent's turn, you have to summon Sharakusai. And again, you can make an argument either way. If you want the immediate disruption, you can just add the Ghost Ogre, or you could add the Madden Spider for a little more extension and another draw too. And again, we just use the field spell, banishing the Wagon from our graveyard. And pay another 6, add the Nashiwari Surprise, I always want to call it Nashiwashi because I'm a child and I don't read, but there you go. So that actually combos without Foxy Tune as well, I just realized that. So that's how you can do the full combo line with no Amin and no Foxy Tune. You just use Sharakusai and any other any other punk monster in hand. I thought about Foxy Tune there, because I was about to say, now the next combo line I'm going to show off is how to combo with only opening Foxy Tune in a pure punk deck. Okay, so for this one, like I said, I'm going to show off how to combo in a pure punk deck opening only Foxy Tune and nothing else relevant, not even any other punk monsters. Of course, here we hit the E-Tally, which is huge, but we're just going to assume, not only am I going to assume I don't have it in hand, but as I activate the Foxy Tune here, I'm just going to go ahead and even pitch the E-Tally, so it's not even going to be a relevant factor. So we're going to use the Foxy Tune to special summon the Amin from our deck. And now we are going to activate the Amin in order to add the Sharakusai. And because we used Foxy Tune to get the Amin out, we actually haven't normal summoned yet. So now we can normal summon Sharakusai. And again, it's pretty much going to be the same thing from here. But this is why I also said at the top of the video, or at the top of the combos anyway, that I really like getting down that one core combo line for a deck. Because as we can see here, you know, if you can manage to get down this sequence that you can do if you open just Amin, then all of your other openings are going to pretty much just branch off of that and be a variant of that. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that is, in my opinion, the easiest way to learn a combo deck. And I'm not really talking about much my plays here because, again, these are things we've already talked about doing like I think even this is the 5th time now. We, you know, go for the Rising Carp, using the Rising Carp to pull out the Wagon and the Deer Note, use the Wagon to add the field spell, Secret Summon into the Jam Dragon Drive, activate Jam Dragon Drive's effect, and also the Deer Note effect as well. Deer Note is going to bring back specifically Sharakusai because we want to summon the Amazing Dragon during the opponent's turn. The Jam Dragon Drive is going to add, again, your choice of Ghost Ogre or Madam Spider. In this case, I'll add Madam Spider for an additional draw and search. I feel like most of the time, Madam Spider, like, especially if you are playing Nashiwari Surprise, then I think it is right to just add Madam Spider. In the past, I've sometimes defaulted to adding Ghost Ogre, but again, the Nashiwari Surprise does also destroy like the Ghost Ogre does, so... And it's even less conditional about it, so if you're playing this, then I usually recommend adding the Spider over the Surprise. Plus, it also gets you an additional draw as well. Alright, so I think that's... I'm trying to think if there's any other combos that I want to show off here. Let me think for a second. I think that's pretty much it. I think those are pretty much all the main relevant combo lines that I can think of for the Punk Primer here. So, I hope you all found the information in this video helpful. Again, a lot of people in my last Punk video were asking for a video like this, so I wanted to throw one together, not only just because it was requested, but also because I really like Punk as a deck. In the future as well, we have the Gold Pride cards to look forward to, so it definitely does pay off to not only get, but also learn the Punk cards now, because not only are they actually a very solid deck right now, but they will get even better in the future. And also, Punk now has a secret pack that you can you know, unlock and then buy in the shop. So it's not like you have to hard craft everything like you did in the past. So again, I hope that you all found the information in this video helpful. That's about all I've got for this one. So let's just go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the very end. That means a whole lot to me, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel. And if you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways besides YouTube, there are plenty of ways to do that. If you check out the description below, you'll find a bunch of links down there. One of them goes to my Patreon. You're actually seeing the names of everyone subscribed to the Patreon on the screen right now. So if you're interested in getting your name in the credits here at the end, if you want to see more daily Master Duel content, or if you're interested in one-on-one private coaching sessions, I offer all of that on Patreon. I also stream live on Twitch. Feel free to go ahead and click that link and follow and or subscribe there. I also have the Discord community, if you want to follow that link, where hundreds of duelists have already signed up. Free to join, and you can just come hang out, talk about the game, and chill in general. Final link that's going to be in the description is my Twitter. You can follow that if you want some more notifications of what's happening with the channel. So, all in all, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.